Hi everybody, it's Christopher and welcome to Life's Not Over, It Just Looks Different on YouTube. In today's video, I want to build on a video I did a couple of weeks ago when I talked about how much I enjoyed learning Braille. And I want to talk more about Braille today because earlier this week, January 4th, 2022, was not only World Braille Day as proclaimed by the United Nations, it was also the anniversary, or what would have been, Louis Braille's 212th birthday, if he was alive today. The interesting thing I saw when I read about Louis Braille was that he invented his namesake, this reading system that bears his name all around the world, when he was only 15 years old. When I was 15 years old, I was just trying to get through grade 10. And here he was creating a reading system for the entire world that's still with us hundreds of years later. Good for him. So I thought I'd answer a few questions about Braille that I often get when I'm out in the community, and I'd tackle a few of those today in this video. One of the first questions I'm often asked is, does everybody who is blind or partially sighted read Braille? And the answer probably doesn't surprise you when I say no, but what might surprise you is how low the number is of the population who actually reads Braille. It's less than 10% of the blind and partially sighted population in the world who reads Braille. And there's a few reasons for that. Part of it is technology. Part of it is a lot of the population who is losing their sight and is in the blind and low vision community these days are older people who maybe didn't want to pick up Braille later in life. But it's still a very low number. So when people in the community ask me, whether it's a business or maybe somebody from the city, they ask me, should they do Braille signage or should they print some of their brochures and other materials in Braille? I like to say, yes, if you can, please do, because we're all about inclusivity these days. We're trying to be more inclusive, and that is one more way to be as inclusive as possible. But in reality, to catch more people who are blind or partially sighted and be able to make things easier for the people who have partial sight and are able to read printed materials or signage, nice large signs, clear print, good contrast on your materials, good clear print, larger print on your materials, that will even catch more people and be even more inclusive. One of the other questions I'm often asked is Braille a language? And I know that in my previous video, I had compared Braille to a language in the sense that I said, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that is still true. But Braille itself is not a language. There is Braille in many languages. There is English Braille, French Braille, Spanish Braille, Chinese Braille. So it is just a reading system that has been adapted for each of those languages and is used around the world in many different languages. In my other video, I also talked about how I was learning to write Braille, and I mentioned using the slate and stylus, this little thing right here. I promise you, and if you ever have to learn Braille, this might be the way you start learning Braille, but it is not the only way. If you're going to write a large document in Braille, or you're going to write an entire page, you don't have to do it this way, I promise you. There is such a thing known as a Braille typewriter, what my friends often call a Brailler, which has 7 keys on it, one for each of the dots, plus a space. And that is a very commonly used piece of machinery. And there's also Braille printers, or what are known as embossers, that can do large volumes of printing. There's software that you can get to talk to the printer that will emboss the Braille into the printer, or you can print things off on the printer. So there are other ways to get Braille printed. This little thing is just one of the early ways. And I kind of compare this to when you were in school and you were first learning how to print in probably kindergarten, and you were told to use a pencil so that you could erase your mistakes. This is kind of the same way. Think of the slate and stylus as a Braille pencil to start learning to write Braille and be able to sort of feel each of the dots as you're composing them. One of the other questions that I'm often asked is, should my child or should an older person learn Braille? And I see this come up actually a lot in a group that I'm in on Facebook. People ask this question about their child. And my answer to it would be, why not? It doesn't hurt, because I was taught Braille 16 years ago, and even though I don't use it a lot, so I don't have the tactile sense, or I haven't developed the tactile sense to read it fluently, if I was ever to lose my sight, more of my sight later in life, I have that knowledge now, and I wouldn't be starting from zero. So I would say, if you can learn Braille, why not? Just do it. It's not a bad skill to have. Now, does the person need it? Yes, I think there is a use for it. And one of the uses that I find for it is it teaches sentence structure, about where to put your commas and your periods and all of that kind of thing. And it also teaches proper spelling. For instance, in the English language, we have one of my favorite examples, there, and there. T-H-E-R-E, T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E, and T-H-E-I-R. They all sound the same, but they have very different meanings, very different uses in sentences. So if you're teaching a person Braille, it could actually teach them the different spelling of those words, because they all sound alike. So that would be a very helpful reason to learn Braille as well, is to help with the spelling. Something else I want to share with you about Braille is that I actually had my children's book done in Braille. So Tommy Wants a Guide Dog, the book that I had done in regular print and large print, I also had it done in Braille. Now, getting it done in Braille, this is what we call interpoint Braille, and it's just the Braille. There's no pictures here. It's just the Braille text, but also there are Braille printed descriptions of the images that you could see in the book. Print Braille itself is very expensive, so this was actually a lower cost way for me to get the Braille book printed. And on my website, if anybody wants to pick up the book, you can actually get this book and the regular book so that a family could read it together, to see the pictures, but also be able to read the Braille. But the child who is reading the Braille, or anybody who's reading the Braille, could read the Braille descriptions as well to know what is actually happening in the pictures. Printing in Braille is actually much more space consuming. It takes a lot more pages to print in Braille. You'll notice that the thickness of the children's book itself, with all of its pictures and everything, is actually quite thin, whereas the Braille book is much thicker, because you have to get all of that print in there and also the printed descriptions for each of the pages. And this is done in what we call grade 1 Braille, which is uncontracted, meaning every letter, every piece of punctuation, everything is in here getting its own cell. For more fluent Braille readers, there is a thing called uncontracted Braille, or what used to be called grade 2 Braille, which is kind of like a Braille shorthand. It has abbreviations for commonly used words, and it also has abbreviations for commonly used letter combinations to make things a little bit easier, takes less space to print, and it also, for people who are fluent Braille readers, they don't have to sit there and read every single letter and character. They can get the gist of it a little bit more quickly and read a little more fluently. So that is contracted Braille versus uncontracted Braille. There is also scientific Braille and math Braille. Braille has been adapted for many different things over the years, but the two most popular things and most common things, I think, are contracted Braille, uncontracted Braille, for reading print, like in that children's book. That is everything I wanted to share in today's video. I want to thank you very much for watching these videos, for clicking like down below, for subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who've done that, shared these videos with friends, told friends about the videos so that they'll come and watch them. I really do appreciate the support. I appreciate each and every one of you who does watch these videos. Thank you so much for doing so, and I hope you have a wonderful day.